This is a FarmHER RanchHER special presentation from the Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show, hosted by Kirbe Schnoor.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. This is the FarmHER and RanchHER panel. We called it Making an Impact because we know so many women in agriculture like yourselves and the men out in the crowd, thank you for being here, are making such an impact on our industry. And again, that's why we're all here, right? And I have three wonderful ladies joining me up on stage here today. It's Jessie, Kaylene, Anna. You guys are trailblazers. You are, just doing so much for our industry and beyond. So let's dive right into it. Jessie, I'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your role within the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Jessie Jarvis, and I am a third-generation rancher from southern Idaho. We have a cow-calf operation where I work alongside my husband and our young children, and then my parents as well. And I also own a company called Of the West, which is an online platform where people can go find jobs in agriculture and connect with freelancers and contractors as well. So I feel like my involvement in the industry is kind of a little bit of everything.
You wear many, many hats, and we will get to that in a little bit.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Kaylene Ballesteros. I am from the Des Moines, Iowa area. I grew up on a small cow-calf farm, but also part of our family business was a horse operation. So the breeding, the training, the showing, and the hopeful of selling them too, right? So I grew up mostly showing American quarter horses and really involved in that. I do now. I have a different job. I work for John Deere, but I do still play a small part in our business. Got 3 little kids at home, 3 little boys. Just had our third boy just at 3 months ago. So got a new one.
Yeah, so thank you so much for being here with us today.
My name is Anna Kobza. I'm originally from eastern Nebraska. I didn't grow up in ag originally, but I found my way here via an interest in a career in feedlot nutrition, and so that's the space that I work in now. I'm currently in Nebraska working on my PhD. I also work alongside my fiance's family at their family ranching operation in western Nebraska, and I have an online platform where I like to share and advocate for the cattle feeding sector and our ranching community as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And I'm Kirbe Schnoor. I am the host of FarmHER and this season of RanchHER. Janie Johnson, she decided to have a child, so I get it. She needs to be at home with her little girl, Olivia, and so I'm hosting this season of RanchHER as well. And so, again, thank you all for being out here with us today, and we're going to get to hear more from these ladies right now. Jessie, as you mentioned, you wear many, many hats, and you come from a great and interesting background of a family who has been in ranching and farming, but you kind of have directed your career path in a different way because you saw there was a need, and so you created Of the West. Go into that a little bit more, and when was that moment where you're like, you know what, we're missing something in this industry, and this is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I went to college, I didn't necessarily have the intention of staying in agriculture. I wanted to go be an anesthesiologist, and I wanted to get a biology degree. And about 6 weeks into my college career, I thought, you know what, I miss agriculture. I miss the people of ag. I made the wrong decision. So I switched to a business degree, and I had worked in our state cattle association after graduation before I had moved back to the ranch. And so just that experience in itself really made me aware of a different side of the industry. Even though I grew up on a ranching operation, you kind of think, oh, I know everything there is to know about ranching, when in reality that's not the case. I knew a lot about our specific operation, which is one of thousands in America. So that was a really great opportunity to kind of give me that different perspective. And so knowing how important and vital that was to my career, I've always just been interested in seeing those different perspectives. So after moving back home, then I was a contractor and a freelancer for a while, even while I worked on the ranch, just because I think idle hands are the devil's work. So I was always involved on that side of things as well. And even in that moment, I thought, it's hard to find people who are looking for contractors and freelancers. And, as my involvement in ranching, and my husband and I got married and have kids, and we're very well connected within our ag and Western industries, and people would come to us and they'd say, hey, we're looking for a new employee. Do you happen to know of anybody who's looking for a job? Or, hey, I'm looking for a job. Do you know of anybody who's hiring? And we kind of felt like matchmakers, but we never knew the right eligible bachelor for bachelorette, or however that works. And so finally one time I got 4 calls in 1 week about people either looking to hire or looking for a new job. And I thought, wow, if this is a problem just within my own network alone, there's got to be more of a need out there. And so that's how Of the West was born.
Well, and again, I just think there is such a need for that. We're all connectors, and we like to connect each other to different opportunities that are available, but we want people coming back to ag if that's what they want to do. And so encouraging people that and opening a door for them, I think, is so vital and so important. You mentioned social media and the platform and how you really advocate on there for our industry. Touch on that a little bit more and kind of how your journey got started with that.
Yeah, so like I said, I didn't grow up in ag. I went to a private school in my small town, and I did decide I wanted to join FFA in high school, but I had to go to the public school to do that. And so I got to college, and I started out as an animal science major, and I thought, I really wanted to build a business around providing ag education or ag experiences for youth, both in rural and urban communities. And I was in this entrepreneurship program in college, and I was just really struggling to figure out how to monetize that in my current stage of life. And so I remember one night after finals week, my senior year of college, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to start an Instagram account and see where it goes. And it really took off. During my master's, I was working on our research feedlot daily, and so I was sharing that with people. And I think people really enjoyed seeing that side of our industry. It wasn't very commonly shared. There was lots of people representing agriculture online, the farming community, the ranching community, but there was very little representation for the cattle feeder. So I felt like I was filling a little bit of a niche, and that's kind of where I found my role and my spot in this industry, is really sharing that side of our story.
I've got to ask you, does it ever get challenging though? And I mean, Jessie, I know you do this as well. Social media it's not always the kindest place and space. I think we all know that. And so what are the challenges you think that you face, and kind of how are you able to go around that or just kind of tune out those difficulties?
Yeah, that's a really great question. It's an industry that I know we are all so passionate about, and so when someone attacks it, it feels like a personal attack, and we're so quick to just want to defend our industry, and so I get it. But when we play defense, we're often don't communicate very well because our emotions are affecting our ability to communicate well. So that's a big challenge for me, is just being able to understand that these people come from a place of not knowing, and so not knowing instills a little bit of fear. So you have to kind of meet them where they're at, and just kind of take a step back and be like, this is not a personal attack. If you need to take a night and sleep on it, like I often do, you come back with a much more level head in the morning. But the feedlot sector specifically is definitely probably the least palatable sector of our industry to try and advocate for, and so that makes it an extra challenge as well. But I think that's all the more reason that we need people representing it.
What are your guys' thoughts on social media?
I have two things that I always go back to. The first one is what you put out into the world is usually what you get back. So when it comes to the type of content that I put out, I really focus on always putting a positive spin on it, because I think that if I am negative to my audience, then I am going to attract more negativity. So in reality, I would say that 98% of the conversations that I have are always positive in some way, and I really do attribute that to that kind of being the message that I want to share. But the other thing, too, that I think is when it comes to somebody who is maybe being negative, often one time they have their mind made up. They have no intention of changing, so it's not necessarily a great use of my time to try to change their mind, because they have no intention. They believe what they believe. They feel strongly in that conviction, and I'm not trying to change somebody's mind necessarily. I just want to provide them with a connection to a farmer or rancher, because most people don't have that. I think is it 54% maybe of people under the age of 18 have never seen a cow in real life. Wow. So when you think about, really, I am here to provide that connection piece. And so I always want to create conversation instead of, telling somebody, oh, well, that's not true. I always go back to, well, can you tell me why you feel that way, or why do you think that way? Or really, like, coming into it, seek to understand versus to be understood. So I usually ask questions as to, well, where did you learn that, or why do you feel that way? And then come in with not necessarily my rebuttal, but my personal experience in it. And that always seems to work really well for me.
I think for me, and especially, I don't necessarily have a focus of social media personally, but there are some folks that do reach out to me, or we have conversations. And I also think about me as a viewer. And for me, I think of education. So if there's something that I see in the comments, yes, like you see it, you feel a certain way, right? Like, let's take a step back. But with that, I always think, okay, well, there's probably a way, if they're already looking at something I have, I can release a new post or a new story that might provide that education in a different way so it doesn't feel necessarily personally attacking them. And I think sometimes you have a better chance of opening their mindset that way.
Yeah, well, going off that a little bit, obviously you're a mom of 3, you're busy, you grew up on an operation, a cattle operation, but you're in the corporate world and you have been for a little while. Kind of talk about that and the journey of juggling that, because not only, I mean, you're a mom, that's a full-time job.
Yeah.
And you have a full-time job, and then you have like 6 more full-time jobs. And people always say, man, how does she do it all? And it's not easy. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and that's where I think at first I didn't necessarily know where my calling was or where my passion was. I grew up in the industry. My parents were in the industry, right? I didn't know any different. And I've told this story a few times to people that know me. I grew up in it. My mom was in the rodeo world. She was in the equine marketing world. I told myself when I went to college, I'm not going to do marketing and I'm not going to do agriculture. I'm going to do something else, you know? And
joke's on you.
Yeah, right out of college, actually right in the middle of college is when I started working for John Deere in a student program. And it's been 13 years and I've never looked back. So first of all, never say never, right? But I think one thing I learned is when I started doing that, I knew I wanted to do that. I knew I wanted to do something different. For one, I knew I had something to contribute to that world. And I wanted to experience that, and I wanted them to experience me. The other side of it is I had things to learn. And so I just felt like nothing has to be permanent, but that's what I want to do. After a few years of doing it, I started thinking, I think I could do more too, right? Like it don't have to have this 8 to 6, 8 to 7, job. It's how can I make it a hybrid situation? And so that's where I really started thinking, how can I still be a part of my family's business? Because we have less land, we have less farmers, we have less ranchers. We need to get really honestly creative in what we're doing to continue our legacies, continue this culture that we have. And so I'm like, I'm not going to let this stop right here. I want to keep it going. I want to be a part of that. So for me specifically, we focus on breeding. That's something that I can do while still doing my day job, and I still get to be a part of it and raising some of what I hope to be some of the best bred horses, and get to have a lot of fun with it too. And most importantly, my kids get to experience it.
They always say, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. I think that is a lie, because ranching and being in this industry is a lot of hard work. And you could still love it, but it's still work, right? I think going off of that too a little bit, obviously this is about women in agriculture, women in ranching, women in farming. But I hear more times than not, and I mean, I host 2 shows about women doing these things, but more times than not, we hear a lot of the females talk about the male support that they've had, whether it was from a grandpa, a father, a neighbor down the road, a husband, a brother. Go into that a little bit more, and just kind of the support system that you feel like you've had as a female being in this industry and finding your place in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason that I'm here today is because my husband is at home with our kids, and we're in the middle of calving right now. And so there is no way that I could be here doing what I am doing without the support of my husband and my parents. And I am so eternally grateful to them. But I will say one thing that I have really experienced, especially in our industry, is I think that men value women in our industry more than probably other industries out there, because women work alongside men doing exactly what they do. And yes, I know that I can go do anything on our ranch by myself. I know it's probably going to take me a little bit longer. I don't have the physical strength of a man, right? But I also, I'm just grateful that I've never been told that I am less than because I am a woman. And I know that's not the same for all other industries, but I think that here in agriculture we are very lucky in that sense, just because, we are able to work alongside our male counterparts, and they do have a deep appreciation for that.
Yeah, and I would echo everything that she said. My dad, he never thought of me any different, and like he said, honestly, you hit the nail on the head. Like, I think it's our industry, a little bit of our culture, that they really value the roles, and they really value us being a part of just the industry as a whole and the business as a whole. And I was the oldest child, so you could say I maybe just didn't have a choice.
My older sister always says that too, but I also am the middle child, so we know how that syndrome goes that I have.
Yes. So 5 years between me and my younger brother. So Dad needed extra hands a lot on the ranch. So there was a little bit of that, but he never treated me any differently. I did everything that he did. He taught me everything. Still to this day teaches me a lot. And also on the horse showing side, my uncle, he is a big part of that part of our business. And again, another male that really helped shape and make sure and foster that we're going to continue a part of that family business.
Yeah, when I think about the men in my life, the first person that comes to mind is a family friend who lived a few miles away that helped me get my foot in the door of this industry. It was about 7 years ago, and I know that because the Farm Service Agency just called me telling me I needed to pay my last payment on my loan. But he helped me take out a loan at our local Farm Service Agency to buy a few bred heifers. And so his support and kind of encouragement in helping me do that, he took me to the loan office, he helped me fill out the paperwork, he's helped me with the farm visits, he helped me with all of that. So that was really encouraging to have someone like that in my life. And I didn't grow up in ag, but my father has always been so interested in what I do. So I love hearing him ask me questions and be super interested in what I'm doing. And then, of course, my fiance, Kane, when I first started dating him and going to the ranch and learning how to do things I hadn't done before, he'd be like, well, you can go do this. And it's like, can I, though? Like, I'm not sure I know how. And he's like, yes, you can. So never a shadow of a doubt that I could go do something. So I have his full support, too. And, he's super supportive of me pursuing my career. I've dragged him all across the country working on my research and getting my degrees. And I'm finally ready to kind of settle down and get back to his family ranching operation and start my career.
I do have to say, too, so the flip side of your relationship, so my husband is from California, baseball player from the city, knew nothing about this. I met him in college, and he did know what he signed up for, so that is the disclaimer, but he's really learning. He loves to drive a tractor. He loves to work on things. He loves to help build fence. He lets me handle the livestock side of it, but he loves it. He's supportive, and honestly, he's learning just as much. So in my mind, it's still continuing to foster the learning of agriculture in families that maybe didn't have that before.
You're watching a FarmHER and RanchHER special presentation. We'll be right back. Welcome back to a special FarmHER and RanchHER presentation from CattleCon.
More times than not, surprisingly, I get the question, why just females that you guys are focusing on? And I have to tell people, I say, because they're more apt to tell the stories of, our ranching community, of our farming communities. Sometimes the male, my father, he'd be like, yeah, everything's good. And it's like, what? We haven't seen rain since before I was born. What do you mean it's good, But my mom will be like, sit down, let me tell you, how much time do you have? I'm going to tell you how it's going. And it's just so interesting. But there are a lot of molds that women still have to break, even though we are in 2025. Can we talk about that a little bit? And you think maybe the stereotypes that females are still facing in our industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one that I often hear about is obviously agriculture is more of a male-dominated industry. And so in the work that we do on the job side of things, we work a lot with colleges. And right now, when it comes to many colleges across the U.S., their enrollment in ag schools is more predominantly women than men. Like I think of animal science programs. There's a college that I know that their enrollment right now is 80% female, 20% male. And so there's been this question of like, well, where are all the men or the boys? But when you come to events like this and you look around at a lot of companies with sales reps, and it's definitely more male dominated than female dominated. And so I think that that's a very interesting dynamic, if you will, of how that works.
Yeah, and I think whether you're in the corporate world, any kind of business, right, you'll tend to find some of that in different areas, not every area, but for me, people have asked the same thing, and I just say, like, understand, acknowledge that there's challenges there, but keep moving forward. Do not dwell on the past. Do not get stuck in the stickiness of it. Keep moving forward. Find what you're good at. Find your strengths. Know your worth. You might have heard me say earlier, I had a lot to offer to the corporate world, right? That's one of, here, that's one of the main things that I'll always tell young women that I talk to, and I honestly have to tell myself that every morning in the mirror, is you know your worth, right? And so navigating that is a challenge, but just keep your sights moving forward.
Yeah, I can very much echo Jessie's sentiments. My master's program was predominantly female. My PhD program, again, predominantly female. But then when you go out into the industry, it's like they evaporated into thin air. Don't know where they all went. I'm sure they exist somewhere. Overwhelmingly, I feel very supported by our male counterparts in this industry. But there is, always things that you encounter. I don't like stepping on a feed yard with a bunch of men and getting called sweetheart. It just rubs me the wrong way. It feels belittling and disrespectful to me. But those are the minority of the experiences that I have. Overwhelmingly, I feel very supported.
Most definitely. Jessie, I'm going to ask you this. As you go out into these college campuses, and I know we're hearing more and more people are not going back to their farms and ranches, but we could go down that rabbit hole if everybody wants to about land costs, the prices of cattle, just prices of corn, just everything. And that's always been a thing, right? That's always going to be a thing. What is your thought process on maybe why, generations aren't always necessarily going back to the ranch, but they are still wanting to stay in agriculture and find a career path? What do you tell them? What advice do you give them? How do you navigate that?
Well, the world really is your oyster, and I say that because oftentimes when we talk about agriculture and I ask kids like, hey, what do you want to do? And they say, I want to work in ag. And okay, well, what does that look like? Well, I need to be a farmer, a rancher, a veterinarian, or a professional cowboy. Okay, well, that is 4 jobs. They're great jobs, but that is not everything that is in our industry. It is only, a very small percentage of those roles. And so I look around the businesses and the booths here at CattleCon, and I think of, how many opportunities there are to work in our industry. If you want to be in marketing, you can find a job in agriculture. If you want to be a web designer or a web developer, you can find a job in agriculture. If you want to be in sales, guess what? You can find a job in agriculture. Anything that you want to do, even as a clothing designer, you can still work in designing cowboy hats and boots and clothes for agriculturalists. So if you are passionate about being in our industry, there is a way, you can figure out a way to make money in doing that and find something that is fulfilling and that you are passionate about. There is no shortage of opportunity to work in an agriculture or a Western industry.
Yeah, you know what? Off of that too, it just kind of dawned on me. I'm like, people, and we said this a little bit, since COVID 2020, people really want to know their ranchers. They want to know where their food comes from. They want to know more about the land that we're all living on. But then I also say it's a little bit of the Yellowstone effect too, right? One of the biggest questions I get is, why do you think people tune in sometimes to RanchHER or FarmHER? And I said, people like to see what other people have and how they're living. And it's not a negative thing. They just want a glimpse into somebody else's life because it's interesting, it's entertaining. But aside from that, with the Yellowstone effect, talk about kind of how that's adjusted and maybe changed your perspective on our industry and the role you play within our industry. This is for all 3 of you.
Well, I think it's great that we've gotten this exposure and that people are really interested. And we do live in a society where today's generation of people was really, really interested in where their food comes from, which is great. And then it also brings a lot of questions with it. And they're fair questions. They have the right to ask those questions. So I think it's kind of shown me that as an industry, we have to be willing to answer those questions. We have to be willing to be questioned and be okay with that and be totally transparent when we do that. So for me, it's a little bit of an eye-opener to how we can approach those conversations because those people are really interested. So it doesn't do any good to turn them away or shame them for asking questions that maybe you think are silly. They're just really interested in what we do.
Oh gosh, I just think that it is the perfect the perfect storm, I should say, of opportunity for our industry because, and I think that goes along with COVID and people wanting to move out of cities and into more rural areas. And then with Yellowstone, people are interested in rural life and ranching and farming and agriculture. And now they are a little bit more consumed about, well, where does my food come from? And I have these questions. And so what an opportunity for us to be able to welcome people in and be able to connect ourselves like, oh, you have questions about ranching? Like, I'm a rancher. I can help you. I can be your Google, if you will. And so I think think that it is absolutely great that we have that opportunity. And, opportunity is not a lengthy visitor. That is one of my favorite quotes in life. And so you really have to strike while the iron's hot. And we know that in our industry all too well. So I think that now is such a great opportunity with people asking questions and being curious about our industry. Why not let them in and answer those questions so that we can continue to share this with them so that we don't have as many disconnected consumers as obviously we're all facing, because the population of people involved in agriculture has decreased since the 1980s, and we have a growing population that we are feeding, so that the math ain't mathin', if you will. So we are only going to continue to see that discrepancy between people who are connected to agriculture and who are not. And so we need every single one of us to continue to tell that story, but why not now when people are asking about it?
Yeah, and for me, from a business standpoint, I see things like, one, it sheds light on the profitability. It shed light on the economic impact, whether it's on the equine industry, the cattle industry, Western as a whole. Seeing that there is that strong economic impact, it perks ears up from a media standpoint, like you had mentioned, from sponsorships, and really even like at work, you have a whole different target audience that now is interested. And it's a good thing to take advantage of that. Like we don't want to turn them away just because they don't know. We still want to take the advantage to educate and teach those different audiences about our life and our style. And like you said, it's an opportunity to take advantage of.
Well, and I think what a great way to present that, the way all three of you did, in such a positive way, because some might say too, wow, Yellowstone's really glamorized our industry. I remember the first episode, and I'm not hating on Yellowstone right now, but I was like, yeah, if that's how, that cow calved and that calf just got up and ran away like that, that'd be very, very easy and nice, right? We'd all love that. But that's not how that goes. And so on the flip side, though, how it really has portrayed that all ranchers are rich and they all have a very nice house. And they all look like John Dutton. I was like, hello, John Dutton, But that isn't the reality of it either, though. And so what are your thoughts, though, in combating that and being like, hey, some of us only get one check a year, and that's if it's a good year. And not everybody's house is like that. So, some of us have modular homes that we have to put on our land because we've already spent all of our money on our calf crop, and we got to wait to build that house, several years down the road. I mean, what's your thoughts on that side of things? Because, again, I love the positive spin you gave it, but the reality is it's harder than what some of it's been made out to be.
Yeah, I would say, obviously, some of it is a bit dramatic, right? Fabricated almost to a sense. And if anybody would bring it up to me, I'd just say there's a few things that are not right. But there are other elements in the gist of the fact that this is not just everyday operating. If all we really had to focus on was raising, feeding, breeding, doctoring, that would be great, right? But it's not. You still have to face economic situations, input costs. You have to face whether it's political situations. There's all of these different things that the reality is that you have to figure out how to navigate that too, and really have to become very skilled in the business aspect of it as a farmer and rancher. And I think that's something that can be a little bit undervalued at times.
Well, I think sharing online too, people are really attracted to people who are really authentic and who show up very transparent. And I believe in total transparency in our industry. Even the things that are not pretty or not fun to discuss, they're not always well perceived, but I think it's important for people to know about them. So I think if you can even share the things that are not always as glamorous, Instagram and Facebook, they can all be kind of a highlight reel sometimes. But I think if you share a good mix of both, you kind of give them a better representation of what this industry actually is without over-romanticizing what we do, because that can be easy to do sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, too, because obviously we probably hear this from members of our industry of like, oh, that's not true, or, oh, I don't like to see that. But I often think, do you think that police officers or detectives watch Law & Order SVU and say the same thing about their industries? Probably. Like, there's nothing about that is...
Not everything's accurate on Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, right? Like, yeah. I'm sure doctors watch that and think, what on earth?
My husband's a police officer. I can attest he says that.
Perfect. So one of the things, like, we are not Yellowstone's audience. So I think that for those of us who, maybe have a negative taste in our mouth about what, like Taylor Sheridan, he cares about agriculture and Western industries. He absolutely does. But we are not his target audience. He wants to bring people in behind the curtain and under the fold to see what we're doing. So I think we shouldn't necessarily be as hard about those types of elements. But on the glamorization of our life, we don't have a helicopter, and it is kind of unfortunate that because I think oftentimes, again, people think like, oh, ranchers, they have all this real estate and they're so rich, and we know that's not necessarily the case. But again, like Anna said, I think that's why it is so important for us to share our lives and what it is that we do. And like I may not be John Dutton, but I'm Jessie Jarvis, and I'm a real rancher, and this is how life is in our operation, and the family business element of it. Obviously, that is something that is very true. Family dynamics are very, very difficult, and so I do appreciate how it has kind of peeled back the curtain. But again, it's a drama. We've got to get people in to want to watch the next episode on Sunday night, and now all of the spin-off shows. So I think overall it has a great heart.
Yeah, most definitely. That's funny you say that, and you brought up the family aspect. Family dynamics are challenging, and I think more times than not, you're like, oh, have you ever worked cattle with your family member? Yeah, let's talk about that, right? Like, that is not fun sometimes. Sometimes it's great. I was just gathering cattle. I was filming a RanchHER episode, and I was like, wow, this is so fun. I was like, oh, wait, none of us are related. That's why. This is great. But I think, too, talk about obviously there's highs and lows, but talk about the positives of being able to work with family and being able to bring up the next generation. I mean, you guys have children, and you're obviously engaged, and you see it with your fiance's family. Just not everybody gets to spend that much time with their family, and there's a lot of greatness about that.
Well, I will say, because we had RanchHER come and film on our operation, and you're mic'd up the entire time, so that's the best that Justin and I have ever worked cattle before, because we knew if we yelled at each other, the whole world was going to see it on TV, so...
That is very, very true. Sometimes they'll be like, is this thing off? It's like, no, it's been on for 4 hours. And they're like, oh, dear Lord. I'm like, yeah, you didn't say dear Lord. You said a few other things, so we heard it.
No, I think that's a good question, though, because I'm about to get all too familiar with that. Coming into a ranching family, he's an only child, so his parents are really to start this transition. And so for me, it's kind of the unknown of what role am I going to fill, how am I going to participate with having my own career and my own desires for my future. But I think, and I know this is something that we're all taught to do well, is communicate well, but that gets really hard when you are very comfortable with the people you're working with and you have no problem telling them exactly how you feel. You almost over-communicate. But so I think it just comes down to maybe understanding your roles, and I'm about to find that out very quickly.
Get married before. No, I'm just kidding.
Lock it in.
Yeah, lock it down.
I have one story about that, and I think it took me a little bit to realize really the value behind it, because of course working with family is spicy, right? At times, festive at times, but I had a then manager that hired me, and I asked them, why did they hire me? And the first thing they said is, because you've worked in a family business. And that sunk in, and I really grabbed a hold of that in that role, and took from what I learned from that, the way to navigate hard situations, the way to work through solutions, the way to, if you're going to have an issue, have a solution with it. So a lot of those different skills that you learn. I also, taught him a lot of those really great 4-letter words that you learn. But yes, my kids. Deworming. My 3-year-old learned a few words the first time he did that, and preschool sent me now, because we have apps that communicate what's going on, and the preschool let me know what my 3-year-old learned, and I just had to say I have no idea where they learned that from.
Zero clue. They must have been at somebody else's house, that's for sure.
This is a special FarmHER and RanchHER presentation. We'll continue right after this. Welcome back to a special FarmHER and RanchHER presentation from CattleCon.
switching gears a little bit as we look out into the crowd too, these ladies obviously are here to hear what you women have to say. What do you think is something interesting people might not know about you, whether it has to do with ranching or farming or social media or, you know, any pet peeves that you have or any fetishes? No, but what's something that you could share with the ladies out here and gentlemen that people might not know about you?
Sure. So I can go with one. I'm sure there's probably many if I really think about it, but maybe a humbling moment, because I think sometimes that's what we all need to connect and have some motivation and confidence. So when I was in 6th grade, I was diagnosed with severe scoliosis, and I had to wear the full-on back brace up until I think I was in June. It was probably a freshman in high school, and I wore it over top of my clothes, and it was not pretty, right? But I learned early on to find my circle. If you're with folks that find unnecessary humor in it, right? I'd laugh at myself too, but you're not with the right people, you're not with the right organization, and that to me was a lesson for me early on. And I think you'd look at me and say, wow, you might be confident, but guess what? 6th grade Kaylene was not confident walking into middle school with a really big, obnoxious back brace, but here I am.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I received an email recently. I'm still very connected with the entrepreneurship program I was a part of in college. And one of the teachers said she had a class she did an activity with at the beginning where she asked them, like, if you could spend a day with anybody, who would it be? And she sent me an email and she said, I just want to give you kudos because someone mentioned your name. And I about cried because I'm not always the most self-confident person in the room, especially if I walk into a room full of men. I am full of self-doubt and a lack of self-confidence. But I might have people fooled on social media that I'm super confident, I'm super proud of what I do, and I have no self-doubt whatsoever. But the reality is that I struggle with it just as much as anybody does out there.
Okay, moment of truth. Okay, so I guess I have a similar one to both of them. So it's not necessarily something that I talk about often and for no real reason, but I am type 1 diabetic. I have been since 2002, so for 20 plus years now. And I've never let that stop me from doing anything. And I don't necessarily talk about it often because I give it as much attention as it needs and not a minute more. I'm not going to use it as a crutch or, let that define my life. The only thing it's ever stopped me from doing actually was getting my pilot's license. But now that I think about it, I don't think I actually want my pilot's license. So, maybe a blessing in disguise. But we all have something that we're going through at some point, and so you never know, what is somebody else's baggage or what they are dealing with in the day, especially because, I look like a pretty healthy individual, and I am a healthy individual, but it's because I have to put a lot of time and effort into my health. And so I always think about just the importance of never necessarily knowing what somebody is going through and always kind of giving grace and the benefit of the doubt, but also using that as the kind of a way of lighting your own fire. And we all have problems and struggles and things that we're dealing with behind closed doors that maybe people don't necessarily know about it. And there's no reason to stop, whether that is mental health or, health issues or whatever it may be. Don't quit. Keep going.
I like that, the don't quit. And again, thank you for being very vulnerable, all of you guys, actually. I think those are things too, and that's what's a unique thing about our industry. I recently was moderating a panel with some women that Bayer had flown out with their husbands. The husbands were in serious meetings, and we got to have a little fun, and we did a panel first, and then we had a hat bar with some mimosas and Bloody Marys because, leave the serious business aside to... We said the men, but, we're like, well, we'll have serious business and we'll incorporate fun with that because we know how to do that. Some people are in towns and ranch or farm in larger communities. Some don't. This industry, this world, this line of work could be very, very isolating. Touch on that a little bit more. And it kind of goes with finding your people, how you said, find your circle, find your tribe. And even social media, you guys both really know social media. You kind of have a tribe there too, in an interesting and weird way. And I don't know. I think we don't always talk about the isolation though that comes with this industry, especially if you're out remotely on a ranch. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. So a big part of my future when I'm done with my degree in a year. The plan is to move to the ranch. And the ranch is very isolated. We're about 40 miles from a highway, an hour and a half from town, and that town is 3,000 people. And we're even further from the next Walmart or Walgreens, even most fast food places. So it is a very isolating place. So I worry about that sometimes, but there is also in that valley a large community of young people that have recently chosen to come back to those family operations. And so I'm very hopeful for that aspect of it, that I get to grow and learn my place in this community alongside them. But certainly I have those worries about being that far away from my family who I'm very close with. They're 6 hours away, so that's a lot harder to get to connect with them and be involved in my nieces and nephews' birthday parties on the weekend if I want to at the spur of the moment. But yeah, finding your community of people is huge. Very close with my family. We connect very often through the Snapchat, Instagram, text, that kind of thing. But then having a physical community as well is going to be really important for me.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I could say, so I look at it at two different elements. So when I'm at home, I moved quite a bit early on in my career, and so I felt like I was trying to find a new tribe, as we moved. And it's kind of like dating. If you haven't done it for a while, it starts to get like, it's intimidating to find new friends and find those people. But I think for one, find organizations that have like minds like you. Find work. For me, I'm lucky I'm at a workplace that are like-minded like me. And whether it's I'm a female in more of a male predominant area, or it's an area of the company that doesn't do the product side with me, you can still find your people and people that have similarities and backgrounds with you. And so just open up the conversation like I said, from a home life and moving around. Again, find those people, and you just have to put yourself out there. For me, I was lucky this time around, and I jumped right into my husband's his work friends, I guess you could say, crew. The police force is also really a big family, and they invited us in. And the funny thing is they come to my house now. We'd have most of the gatherings for our police officer friends and colleagues at our house. They come play with the goats, mess with the horses, do the bonfires. And so we've really been able to encourage bringing them into our own community and fostering that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple of things, and again, kind of taking from both of you, but getting involved is huge, because if you are somebody who is very driven and you're a go-getter, it can kind of be hard to find that circle, especially, in your local area. But usually when it comes to various boards and industry things that you can serve on or be involved in, or organizations, that's usually where the go-getters are. So I think encouraging everybody to, be a member of your state cattle association or your, commodity board, or whatever that may look like for you and your operation in your industry, I think that is huge. Coming to events like this is also a great way, and really making the most of that time. When I come to an event like this, I don't spend it on my phone checking my emails or checking social media, because that's something I can do at home. I can do that on the plane, on the way back home. But if I am here and I haven't seen my friends for months on end, I am going to make a point to meet every single person possible that I can meet, so that I can fill that cup, so that when I'm back home on my ranching operation, which is in the middle of nowhere and not around people, that that's when I can check those emails and really making the most of your time and getting out. And I know, and it's hard for those of us in our industry to make it to meetings and events, right? Because the cows know no holidays. They don't care if you're going to your state cattle association meeting or to CattleCon. They're still going to get out probably at that inopportune time. But making a point to go and continue your education, I think is huge in that. And that, if you are going to continue your education, you're going to be surrounded by people who are also interested in doing the same for them, and networking and learning more. And so that's another great way of finding those people.
Looking out into the crowd now, too, obviously everyone has different career paths up here on this panel. But what's some of the best advice you guys have been given, and what is some of the better advice that you could give to everybody that's out here today?
Yeah, I can say that at my workplace at John Deere, I had one manager when I started as a part-time student. and she has left probably one of the most lasting impressions on me, and it was, Kaylene, no is free. Don't take that completely literally, but in general, no is free. Try something. If you fail, who cares? Try something different. Like I said, know your worth. Go for what you're good at, but also try some different things. Learn along the way, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
I think there's a particular quote from Paul Engler, who's a major cattle feeder, and started cactus feeders down in the Texas Panhandle. And he started this entrepreneurship program that I was a part of in college. And he always said, you've got to have a fire in your belly. And I think about that often because there's, like you said, the line of work we're in, it's not easy, but you have to love what you do. Otherwise, it's going to be extra hard for you. So I think my biggest thing is pursue a career that you're passionate about. It's not worth your time to waste your time and energy in an industry or in a job that doesn't fill your cup, that doesn't move you forward, that isn't really getting you to where you want to go. So for me, it's just making sure you're passionate about what you're doing.
Okay, so we have a podcast in addition to Of the West, and this is a question that I actually ask our podcast guests. And so I'm going to give some advice that one of them had given me, Carly Peterson, and she said, no stands for new opportunity. So basically, when somebody tells you no, don't let that stop you. That is a new opportunity. You can pivot or change, or don't be worried when somebody tells you no. That could just be a no today. Call again tomorrow. Try again tomorrow. And so nobody wants to fail. None of us do. But and so I think that is a huge thing of just continuing to be driven and determined and gritty. And when somebody tells you no, new opportunity.
And like I said, you guys are all in different lines of work for our industry. But for young individuals that are watching, and male or female, what's advice that you could tell them that you might have wished you would have been given at a young age?
For me, I think it's be confident in your brand and find your brand. When you're young, you want to learn. You want people to know that you want to learn. But like I've said, also know what you're really good at and capitalize on your brand. And so when you're looking for jobs, when you're thinking about the work that you want to do and contribute if you are on a farm or a ranch, what am I good at? What can I benefit? And then also, where do I need to learn? As we talked about earlier, learning, you'll also gain a lot of friends and you'll gain a lot of strengths as well, and you'll continue to grow your brand. But don't be afraid to develop a brand, even if you think you're young and not ready for that. It's important.
I guess I'd say I used to use the fact that I didn't grow up in ag kind of as a crutch or like an excuse to fail. I used to think that mattered. And I've learned as I've grown and I've spent more time in this industry that it doesn't matter at all. And we're seeing so many people who didn't grow up in this industry come into this industry and be very successful. In fact, I almost think it's almost a little bit of an advantage to you because you don't come into this industry with any previous biases about this is how our family did it and this is the way it needs to be done. You're a blank slate to be impressed upon. And so don't let that stop you or hold you back. There's absolutely a place for you in this industry.
I'm a big believer in the idea that everything happens for a reason. And so obviously in the work that we do, we work a lot with college kids. And I know that when you're young, you're a little bit naive and you think, okay, I have this plan. When I'm 20, I'm going to do this. And then when I'm 24, I'm going to do this. And then 26 and 28. And we all know people who have been like that, right? How many times has that plan ever actually gone the way that we planned it? No, like it's God's plan actually, and joke's on us if we think that we're going to be able to plan anything in our lives. But everything happens for a reason, and I do believe that if you are unwilling to, if you're so fixated on that goal, you'll often miss a lot of really good stuff that's happening along the way. So I think it's important to be open to trying new things and saying yes. And even if you didn't necessarily think that that's something you were interested in, or is this really long term? Like, you'll never know unless you say yes to those types of things, and just know that everything is going to happen for a reason.
Jesse, you just made me think of when my dad, in our early 20s, I'm going to put my two sisters and myself on blast. We thought we had it all figured out. And he's like, you can't even rent a car without that extra fee. Like, pipe down, and you're still on our insurance until you get a job, and we need to get you off of this. So come on. I'm like, oh, you're right. But every time I was like, man, he's really stuck on that rental car extra fee that I get tacked on with because I'm only 22. Jeez. But it's always, so interesting to, like we said, we're wrapping up here pretty soon, and I want to thank you ladies for being up here, just shedding a little light on what you do, being involved in this industry, how you grew up. I am going to throw a question at you guys because I do like to do this. It's something my family does, and we kind of pick a word for the year. And last year, my word was intentional. The year before that was grace. This year, it's build. If there is a word that you could pick for your year, what would that word be?
I'm going to have to say grit for myself, because there is a light at the end of the tunnel for me to finish my degree, but there's a lot of stuff I got to trudge through to get there. So there's a lot of things that need to be done. So for me, it's just persevering and persisting through all of that, because there is the ending is going to be worth it for me.
For me, I think it's forward. So we have a lot of momentum in this industry. So from a business standpoint, I want to take advantage and move full force forward, whether it's education or taking advantage of opportunities we may have not had before. Personally, for forward, I am just at a point where I really want to enjoy and create that for my family at home. And so I've got some big projects at home. We're going to build some rope chutes and some different things to make sure that the kids stay busy at home. And I'm super looking forward to that. So forward.
Gosh, now I really feel on the hot seat. I had time to come up with a word, and I still don't have one. I think back to more on the business side of things. I have really been focused on polish and perfect. So basically, with Of the West, really continuing to, instead of building new things and building new offerings, really, perfecting what it is that we have and continuing to grow that foundation so that we can continue to impact more and more people in our industry, that will continue to strengthen agriculture and Western industries so that they will be around for future generations.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, give it up for these ladies up here, and give it up for yourselves for sticking around. Thank you so much for joining us here for the FarmHER RanchHER panel. Again, we got to do an episode on Jessie, so if you haven't seen that, now you know a little backstory, so go watch it, because you'll be watching that, looking at those moments, seeing like, I know what she was thinking right there. I know what she was thinking. We have our FarmHER RanchHER trailer over there with all of our merch. We got some new pieces out, so be sure to go check that out before you get out of here today. And again, I just want to thank you all for tuning into RFD-TV and FarmHER and RanchHER, because I'm going to assume that you do, and we just really appreciate that. And again, just thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for watching this FarmHER and RanchHER special presentation from the Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show.